Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. The winds may be shifting in the Zimmerman verdict. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. As we have been reporting, the American media is heavily invested in a race-driven storyline concerning the acquittal of George Zimmerman. While almost everybody admits the murder trial was fair, the press is still pounding the drum that somehow Trayvon Martin did not receive justice because of his skin color. When asked how that can be so, if the criminal proceedings were honest, the question goes unanswered. But there's no question. There is fury over the verdict in some African-American precincts, and the far left is trying hard to exploit that. Here's an example. Shortly before the verdict, I said this. So if the prosecution did present a weak case, and that, again, is the consensus of the media following it, even the liberal media. Yeah. And he does get acquitted, Mary Catherine. I mean, are you expecting people to run out and cause trouble?
Look, I think some people will react emotionally.
But on CNN's website, my exchange with Mary Catherine was reported this way. Bill O'Reilly wondered the other day if, after an acquittal, black people would run out and cause trouble. After all, you know how those people are. Of course, I never said black people. The writer Paul Waldman fabricated that in order to make me look like a racist. Today, CNN corrected the record, writing, quote, "The article incorrectly said Bill O'Reilly wondered the other day if, after an acquittal, black people would run out and cause trouble. He did not mention race in his question." While I appreciate CNN correcting the record, I'm perplexed at why they would allow a radical leftist like Paul Waldman to write for them at all, without identifying him as a radical leftist. Waldman was a senior fellow at Media Matters, the far-left smear website. He's a dishonest zealot. Does CNN really want to be associated with an extremist like him? And on the subject of extremists, there was this exchange on David Letterman last night.
You know that they want to give George Zimmerman a gun now? The Florida state law is that he can get his gun back. I say if he gets a gun, Casey Anthony gets a baby. That's my voice. What is with the booing tonight?
You're an owner, one of the Mets owners.
Yes, I am.
Whoa, Mr. Big Shot,
Mr.
nice
Met,
going.
Yeah. Well, a minority owner, of course.
Well, still in all, I mean, you get free tickets, right?
Better than being a minority in Florida.
Yeah.
Why are they booing?
They're booing because the folks know cheap shots when they hear them. Talking Points believes the tide may be turning in the sad case of Trayvon Martin. I hope so, anyway. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, I hope you saw my interview last night with Tavis Smiley, who contends that black men in America are held in, quote, contempt. He initially said that on ABC News this week.
I think this is, for many Americans, George, just another piece of evidence of the incontrovertible contempt that this nation often shows and displays for black men.
And joining us now from the ABC News studios here in New York City, Good Morning America anchor George Stephanopoulus.
Hey,
so why didn't you challenge him on that, George?
Well, actually, right when he finished that statement, I said that wasn't the question in the courtroom. I said we can have the debate about what you're saying, but that wasn't the question in the courtroom. I tried to get us back to the facts at hand and the matter at hand, which was the verdict that had come in just hours before in that Florida courtroom that found George Zimmerman not guilty. It was also preceded by a discussion about whether or not the Justice Department should bring civil rights charges against George Zimmerman. And one of the things I pointed out just before that as well was how difficult it would be to even bring that kind of a case, given the fact that they would have to prove that race was a factor, which there was no evidence of in the trial. We've heard the jurors say, at least one of the jurors say that so far. It wasn't something that was discussed in the courtroom, and they would have to prove that this was not an accident, not negligence, that he was deliberately trying to shoot Trayvon Martin because of his race. And I said that's a very high bar, and I think if you look at the facts right now, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Justice Department to bring that kind of case, which was one of the things we were discussing in and around Tavis Smiley's comment right there. So I think that, you know, we can have lots of different debates coming out of this case, but one of the things I think you and I can agree on, Bill, is that we first have to pay attention to what was at issue in the courtroom, what was discussed in the courtroom, what the evidence was in the courtroom, and what the law is in Florida.
All right, but I think we're at the point now not only in this case, but in just in general, where, and I like Tavis, and he's a stand-up guy coming on, okay? But I don't think you can allow him to say that black men are held in a contempt in America, that American society is contemptuous of black men. That's false. And I told him to his face last night, it was fallacious, it was wrong, it's irresponsible of him to say it. I think when people start to say these things, that you and me and all the other people who have responsibility to run our programs in a fair manner have to say, hold it, hold it. I don't see it that way. All right, you may see it that way, but I don't see it that way.
I think that's a fair, sort of like criticizing somebody for a book they didn't write. I mean, I take your point, though. I mean, you can have, because you can have so many different debates coming out of this incident. I think it's fair to say that is one.
All right, but look, you might be missing my point here a little bit. It's not even a matter of journalism; it's a matter of patriotism. You don't believe that America holds black men in contempt, and generally speaking, do you?
I think there are some incidences where Americans do. I think there's no question about that.
Generally speaking,
let me finish my sentence, Bill. I was just going to say, on the other hand, you could point out the fact that America has now elected and re-elected an African-American president.
All right, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want you to answer the question. Do you believe America in general holds black men in contempt? Yes or no?
I don't like the way the question is posed, to tell you the truth. I think
that's the question. That's what Tavis Smiley is asserting. That's what he's alleging.
And it sounds like you had a good debate with Tavis over that.
You don't want to answer it. You don't want to answer it. But my responsibility is not just as a commentator. All right, it's basically to stop propaganda, and that's what I consider that to be. Cold. Now, look, everybody's a different style, but you can understand why people like me would be, why didn't he stop him there and say, back that up? What are you talking about? You can't back that up. And Smiley tried to back it up last night, and we have that posted on BillO'Reilly.com.
Like I said, I challenged him in a different way. I said right after that sentence, that wasn't the question at issue in the courtroom. Let's talk about that. So you're right. Everybody
I understand what you did, but I'm trying to raise the bar at the network level. And cable is the Wild West compared to you guys. You're the establishment. You guys have been around. I work for you. I know how it goes down. But I think that in this country now, that there is a strain of hatred toward the United States of America. And I think that strain of hatred has to be challenged by responsible news organizations. Yeah, I want to hear what Tavis has to say. I wouldn't have put him on if I didn't. I don't mind him saying that, but I'm going to get right in his face.
All I would say is that you're looking at one comment he said which can provoke a debate. I just don't dispute you on that at all. If you look at the 10-minute debate we did have with 5 people on that show that morning, where Tavis was one of the participants, it was a vigorous debate about the facts in the case. It was a vigorous debate about whether the Justice Department could bring a civil rights case against George Zimmerman, which gets to the question of race as well, and that the broader points were all challenged. You're right. I'll take your point that specific statement from Tavis did not create its own debate, but we covered a lot of other ground where we had a lot of contentious exchanges there.
All right, George. It's always good to talk to you. Very lively. Thank you for taking the time. Next on the Rundown.